Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us today. I am Adele Bernard, the host of Authentic Conversations, and welcome to another episode. Just want to share a little bit about Transition Clarity, the company that sponsors the show. As a soul strategist intuitive guide, I help people through the big transitions of life, whether that is the dreaded pink slip or a change in the family dynamics, like a divorce or loss of a loved one, or you have a good life and you want a fantastic life. It's all about learning the beliefs, the untruths, the conditionings that you've been told that are not you, that it's leaving your head and all the crazy muckety muck and dropping into your heart to really shine how you were supposed to shine on this earth. It is finding your true, authentic self. If you want to know more about working with me and having that conversation, everything will be in the show notes. Now, to get to my guest. Today, I have Kris Gray on the show. Kris is a fractional director of project management with over 20 years of project management experience. He has led teams building schools, libraries, and even zoo exhibits. Now he leads his own company, Creatapult, that helps other businesses deliver better projects, perfect margins, and reduce risk. A big takeaway of who he is does by when the, the framework can help you get any project or task unstuck and is usable by people in personal and professional lives. And with that, let's welcome Kris to the show. And here he is. Welcome to the show, Kris.
Thanks for having me today.
So, in your own words, I kind of give him the brief description of who you are, what you do. But now I want to know, how did you get to this spot? Like, give us your backstory on how you became the entrepreneur and the owner of your own business doing what you do.
So it was a bumpy road to get here.
They usually
Uh,
are.
it was I did not necessarily start out with the intention of doing my own thing, being an entrepreneur. But what happened was about 9 years ago when our first child was born, I was let go from my job 3 days after she arrived. And we had just given up my wife's job as well because we had fully intended on going to a one income family where she was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I was going to be an accountant. Like things were gonna work out. We had this plan and everything was looking good. That all fell apart within 3 days, like I said, of her being born. And so we went from two incomes to no incomes. And it would then be about 9 months of kind of scrapping and clawing at whatever odd job I could get. I did taxes for people on the side, mowing lawns, slinging coffee at a coffee shop, like pretty much anything I could get my hands on. And the day that the money ran out was the day that I got my first paycheck from what would become my more permanent job at the time. And so in that space of time is when I realized exactly how much risk I was taking on for our family by just trying to do it the traditional route with just the W-2. So I
Yeah.
decided, you know what, I got to have something going on the side here. And that's when I started kind of this like serial entrepreneurship track of always having something going. So I've run a hobby shop on the side. I've done some other things like some marketing work and things like that. eventually settled on what I have now, which is Creatapult, and just kind of came out of an intersection of wanting to do things that were somewhat creative in helping businesses be more successful, but also where my experience was, which was, 20 years of being a project manager for companies in the construction space.
Hmm. Well, and I love the fact that you realize that the W-2 isn't guaranteed.
Right, not at all. Especially if you look at the news right now with what's going on in the tech spaces. I
Yeah.
mean, thousands of people are just, here one day and gone the next.
And if you're listening, ready to work with you. But anyway, I had to. I had to. Um, no, but people often ask, like, do you love being an entrepreneur? And I said, depends on the day, right? Because
Yeah,
some days you're just in the grind of it. You're like, am I ever going to come up for air? And a lot of entrepreneurs, um, if they do have staff, it's not like you can go to your staff with the pressures in your head and on your shoulders because you never go down, you always move up. And how do you find that support system outside of your own company? And the days that are awesome, you want to celebrate and share with people, and you go, who's my right hand person that I can share it with? Yes, your wife is there, what, but right? And so you go, the it's so different because if when you're in corporate and you get a win, you share it with the other corporate buddies because they understand, like, oh, congratulations, whatever. When you're on your own, you're on your own. But you always have to
yeah,
celebrate regardless,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I definitely feel those ups and downs more. The corporate kind of felt like, okay, a win was like a little bump, a loss was a little dip.
Hmm.
Entrepreneurship feels like big humps, big valleys,
Hmm.
and trying to kind of navigate those for sure. And then trying I have found some success with trying to work within like other groups of entrepreneurs and trying to, celebrate each other's wins. That's been
Hmm.
kind of a key driver for me is trying to make sure that if I'm having a bad day, checking in on the groups and trying to help celebrate somebody else's win kind of gives me a little bit of juice to be like, okay, like we're all gonna collectively get through this together.
And do you lean on them too when you're in that valley to say, who else has gone through this?
Yes, that's
Okay.
definitely been a need is putting out there both the wins and the lows because that's what the groups tend to be there for, right? Like we're all in it trying to succeed together, but we succeed and fail together. It's not just about the wins.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you said that because I find with the people I'm working with is especially the men, they don't reach out to say, I'm in a slump. They're all ready to go to the group and say, oh my God, I got the best client ever. Blah. And it's like, well, what about the slumps? No, I keep that to myself. Right. And it's
Yeah,
like we 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 move and we grow further, faster together. Good,
right.
bad, or indifferent, right? Like just as you're going to share the joy of your kids being born, you have to share in the sorrow of like, ah, I lost that client. I kind of needed it, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and yeah. So who showed you that entrepreneurship was even possible?
It was undoubtedly my parents. They had run their own construction company for about, in fact, they just retired. So it's been about 35 years total that they ran their own company.
Hmm.
And that was the model that I was following. I was looking at it and trying to assess like, here's what they're doing that's working that I like about their lifestyle, the fact that they were always able to be there and around when, we as kids needed them for something.
Hmm.
Uh, and then, looking at it and saying, okay, but how can I maybe pivot this a little bit to be something that's more my own? and maybe doesn't require the 80 hours a week, because they never really, they at one point they got pretty good size, but they never really had a team that allowed them to step out of the business and let the business run. And that was the part that I was like, okay, so they had really built themselves a job,
Yeah.
but it was still better than what I was seeing out of just the traditional W-2 route.
Right. Right. Well, and that's really important because I I have found that there's a lot of entrepreneurs who have bought themselves a job,
Yeah.
right? It's not a W-2, but you may as well be, right? Because if they can't step away, they can't take 2 months off or whatever. Like, yeah, there are some points because I came from an entrepreneurial family too. There are some times that you, as the owner, would be the only one that can handle whatever that question, crisis, whatever it is.
Hmm.
But if you don't have that right hand person to be able to get a break, to walk away, to step aside, then go get a job,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's great. And you seeing that when you start to think, okay, I'm going to go out onto my own to build in those structures that, yeah, you can go to the little league game, you can go to the gymnastics heat, whatever, but we're also going to take a month off,
Yeah.
right? Like you will check in, but not every day, kind of thing, right? If it's a
Yeah. Pet,
major crisis, yes, you are available, but don't call, like kind of thing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, trying to build systems that pass the laptop test, right? Like how long can I close the laptop and walk away before things are essentially on fire or not working anymore?
Yeah. And that's crucial to understand when that is. Because it's no point saying, okay, we're going to go on vacation. Your wife and your kids go to Disneyland and you're in the hotel on the laptop.
Yeah.
You may as well
Yeah.
stay at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So interesting. What was the biggest financial thing that you learned from your parents that set you up for success in that dry period of 9 months as you started building something?
So we had taken a page out of their book. They wanted to always have kind of a financial runway. So they never ran things, they made good money in their business, but they never wanted to live at the end of their means, right? They were
Hmm.
always trying to put money away and trying to be able to ride out the lean times, and they had to test that on numerous occasions. They survived the dot-com slumps that
Yeah.
all happened. They survived the 2007 2008 crisis that happened. And they were, a lot of their friends in the businesses didn't necessarily make it, or they were having to take out big loans to cover payroll or something like that, to try to ride those situations out, and they never had to do that. And so I what we did when we decided we were going to try this one income thing out is we actually tried it while my wife was still working. And so we were just putting her paycheck away into savings the entire time, and trying to live off of exactly what was coming in off of my job. And so
Hmm.
when we went to zero income, we didn't go to zero money immediately. We had a bit of a runway there. And so it was what allowed me the time I needed to start getting something in. I was able to pretty quickly find some friends that had opportunities for me, like the coffee shop, which became somewhat of a more permanent gig in the moment. But it also bought me time to go get a real estate license, and I sold a couple houses, which were some big cash infusions for us when we needed them. And so it was really looking at their model and saying, okay, like I need to have a runway. I need to not be living out at the edge, paycheck to paycheck still. And so it's kind of this become the same thing in the entrepreneurial journey that I'm on, is this idea that I'll always need to be building that runway for myself,
Hmm.
and trying to make sure that I can last through the lean times as well as the fat times.
Hmm. Well, and I think it's a different way, like, um, because when you say putting away for the rainy day, that kind of has a scarcity mindset where when you're saying, no, I'm building my runway, like, you know, I'm not going to add hurdles that don't need to be there. Like, I'm building that runway. So if you think of the runway as like a jet, well, when you're starting out, you just got that little propeller that fits two people plane. But now you got that runway built, so you can get those big, huge planes to do the runway because you've built it. You have
Hmm.
that knowing that, like we can ride out some tough times, but we're not hopefully not going to have to,
Right. Yeah.
you
Kind of
know?
planning for the worst, but hoping for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you never thought about just doing like accounting as getting just like putting your shingle out as an accountant?
So I never ended up getting my CPA all the way
Okay.
completed. I was working on that at the time that things kind of fell apart. And then I took that time to kind of realize that I felt like I was on the wrong path. Uh,
Oh,
I was working towards something that, it was interesting, but it wasn't really lighting that fire for me. It wasn't like where my true passion seemed to be at. And so when I realized that, okay, this is what life is for the next however many years I'm working, there's a series of months here at the beginning of the year, largely with tax season, where nothing else gets to happen, and looking at it and saying like, well, what about the spring dance recitals? What about baseball season with my kids? Like what, like all of
doesn't
these things
happen.
that I was kind of looking forward to. Yeah, like it was like I will not be there.
Yeah.
It like I may have total flexibility the rest of the year, but there's a chunk of the year where it's just like no. And that was not what fit into my life's picture that I had for myself.
That's awesome to realize. Um, because that chunk of time you can miss so much,
Yeah. Well,
right?
it's like missing 25% of my kid's life essentially. And
Hmm.
it's like that when I kind of put it into perspective like that, it's like, okay, maybe it's just March and April, like, or, February, March, April with tax season. But it's like 25% of their life
We
that
know,
I'm
and
just
it
not going to
spills
be
into
available.
May because then you got
Yeah.
year ends
The
and
late
yeah,
filers, and yeah, and then you've got the corporate filings that start to show up in July through October, and it's like, where does it end?
it doesn't. So yeah, so it's interesting perspective because I know a lot of accountants and I'm sure they never thought about it, right?
And
Like
for
they're
some people,
just
it works. The one of the first firms I started working for, they were a smaller outfit. They just wanted
Mhm.
to hire a couple of additional accountants to help with the load because they were starting to contemplate retirement and what the world looked like there. So they were wanting to take more time off. But they had kind of run it just like my parents had. They ran their business like a job, and they were there when they needed to be, and if they had freedom to come and go, they had a little bit more as the owners of the company, but still generally they're working like late nights to 10, 11 o'clock and
yep,
working weekends. And it's like, so anytime that you're taking off to go be with the kids or be with the family or take a vacation, you're making that up somewhere else.
yeah.
And that
As
was
the
something
kids go
that
to bed and yeah.
hmm And so that was something that I was starting to look at and say, like, you know what? I don't know that this is for me.
Well, and I have a prime example of my own accountant. Like, her first job out of university, some whatever reason, I ended up being her work person to recommend her, and I'm like, she'll work to the bone, but she won't be there at 8 in the morning. And they said,
hmm
"Pardon?" I said, "She just can't get there. She's a single mom, but she'll work overtime at night." And they're like, "Huh?" And so they hired her. which is great. And then later on, as she left the firm and she brought her own firm, and you know how everything went digital, she went digital, and her old boss is phoning her going, "Can you come help us, please?" Like we have no idea, right? And so they've stayed in that really good harmony of they went from employee to employer to mutual mutual counterparts to, oh, well, now I need your expertise. Can you come back and help out? And I think that's beautiful, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's where all of us have to start thinking of how can we, as we build our extended team, whatever that looks like, together. Like you might have a client right now in the construction. Yeah, you're helping him, but then you might have to go back and ask for help too as they build their systems out. Like, how can we build together?
Hmm.
You know, because
Yeah.
if anything we know, tech will always be changing every day.
Yeah, and I forget what the name of the law is on it, but it's like it doubles every 7 years or something like that. And so the speed at which things are changing, it just continues to increase. And so
Hmm.
you got to be ready. Well, the easiest way to do that is to have other people's expertise surrounding you.
Hmm.
That way it's already hard enough as an entrepreneur to have everything in your head to try to be running your company, but then to also have an eye on the future and have to know everything that's coming down the pipeline, whether we're talking AI today or something in the future tomorrow. It's like that's a lot to ask of any one person. You definitely have to have that team structure built around you.
Well, and that's where the like this is how I see the entrepreneurs of the future is that yes, they're the owner, but they are so open to anyone in their company bringing in ideas. Like, please help me keep ahead of the curve. Like
Hmm.
if you see a AI thing coming, or if you see a different tool that could help our systems work faster, that bring it to me. You know, like I have to stay as open as you guys are finding things. And we also have to realize that we've never had four generations in a workforce before, right? So
Yeah.
the boomers are going, oh, these millennials, like they just, and it's like the millennials are going, get with it, grandpa, right? And it's no, it's you got to get the wisdom of the boomers to work with the speed of the millennials and the Gen Zs, right? Because
Yeah.
especially with the Gen Zs, they're just like, why would I stay here for 8 hours a day? Because
Right.
it's your job,
Yeah.
right? And they're going, I'll put in my 8 hours. It just won't be straight, right?
Yeah.
They'll put in 4 hours, go play and have fun, and then pound out the rest of the work later on. But as entrepreneur owners, we have to be open to that experiment. And how well do we move in the fluidity of who's working with us and for us? Right? Because like I just think of like the VA world, everyone is hiring Filipinos,
Hmm.
right? Well, why? Because they work the whole time while you're sleeping. You have a couple hours to catch up, figure out what everyone's doing, whatever. Boom. So then you take all the work that they did all night, work with it, right? And so you're open 24/7,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And it doesn't work for every company, but it's just, it's how do you stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, and thanks to technology, we have this globalized economy that we can work within to try
Hmm.
to do that to leverage all 24 hours in the day
Hmm.
when we otherwise wouldn't have that.
Do you think it's helping us or hurting us?
I think it's exposing us to some new challenges. I think it ultimately is helping us make progress, but if we take the mindset of like, okay, I'm open 24 hours a day, you can very easily fall back into this trap of like, well, now you are working 24
Yeah.
hours a day, and you need to be able to still disconnect from the work and say, like, okay, this is my very specific bucket of when I'm going to do my work, and this is my very specific bucket that I'm going to stay in when it's family time or playtime or whatever
Hmm.
the case might be. Because otherwise, you'll be up at 2 a.m. with your VA trying to problem solve something, and it's like if you fall into that trap too often, pretty soon it's like you got to sleep, you got to rest, you got to do these other things to take care of yourself. Like that's when the burnout's going to strike, and it doesn't matter hardly how much you love what you do. You can't be doing it 18 to 20 hours a day for an indefinite period of time.
Yeah. Well, and I also think too, like maybe I try too hard to accommodate to all the different time zones. And then other people are like, I'm in this time zone. If you want to come to my class or you want to do work with me, you get up in the middle of the night. I'm not.
Right.
Right. And then I'm like, well, you can't complain that you're up in the middle of the night taking this course if that's what you choose to do. You chose it. So get over it. You'll catch up on
Yeah.
sleep later, right? Or whatever, you know? And yeah, so it's fascinating. So as a fractional um project manager, are you working multiple different clients throughout the week?
Yeah, so what I tend to do is I tend to do cohorts that start on a quarterly basis so that I've got, up to about 5 clients that I work with at a time and trying to help them uh, advance their own project management teams so that they're delivering on projects. So I'm spending a lot more time on high level strategy,
Hmm.
training, hiring staff for them, trying to make sure that they have the tools and the processes that they need to be successful. And so I do that in about a 90-day sprint. And
Okay.
then I have retainer services that if they need me to stay on longer, or they are growing, but maybe still haven't quite reached that level that they're comfortable putting in for the full-time hire,
Hmm.
I can stay on and basically continue to oversee the project teams. Um, because what I'm ultimately trying to do is trying to relieve the CEO, who is
Hmm.
most often the one who has direct oversight of the project teams and the project updates.
Hmm.
They don't need to be in the weeds every day handling that. There's a level at which we can insert, myself and say like, okay, I will handle the day to day with your team. You will get the information you need when you need it, but
Hmm.
generally you can unplug from this portion of having to fight the fires and constantly dealing with issues or constantly dealing with like personnel and that kind of stuff in the project space. And so that's where like the retainer services come on is like if they haven't quite grown to that point, I'm still there and available to help them through that. So I'm kind of intentionally trying to stay small, trying not to overburden myself because at the end of the day, I don't want to lose my flexibility just because I had clients that were, needing the help. I I still want to try to help people as much as possible, but trying to make sure that I'm really investing into the clients that I have and making sure that they're happy, that they're getting the results that they need, rather than looking forward and saying like, well, you know what, if I just added another 5 clients or another 10 clients, like what's the difference, right? And it's like, well, it'd be a lot more money, but at the same time, it's like there goes all my time with my family.
Yeah. Well, and you make a good point about the CEO can actually be the bottleneck in the company because the processes aren't in place that he's getting caught in the weeds, like you're saying, but also maybe he can decide when he checks in on the like on the dashboard of the project to say,
Right.
well, I'm just seeing that it's all running smooth. If there's a red flag that he sees, then he brings it down and says, what about this? Right?
Yeah.
right? And then you can have that weekly or bi-weekly meeting to keep everyone in the throes of everything. So, do you find that you're constantly always looking for the next client?
It's been kind of a mix. You know, some of the companies they get the value and they feel like in the first 90 days to 6 months, and that's usually what I sign clients up for is about a 6 month term
Mm-hmm.
of the 90-day sprint plus 3 months of retainer.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 6 months, you know, a lot of them will look at it and say like, yeah, we're doing pretty good. Like we're either okay staying at the level we're at that you've built for us, or we're ready to take that step and go with the full-time hire. But there's a lot of companies probably, you know, I'm probably about 50-50 right now. There's a lot of them that'll stay on and just say like, look, we still either want to continue growing or we like the dynamic that we've established and are comfortable staying with sort of that fractional role because construction seems to have lagged behind a little bit in other industries. They're comfortable with the fractional CFO typically,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't really explored a lot of the other fractional roles of like fractional CEOs or chief operating officers or anything like that. And so this is kind of a new thing. So as companies are starting to get more and more comfortable with the fractional nature of the relationship, then they are choosing to stay on because it's a leaner way of operating. They can kind of use me while they're winning a lot of work, but if for some reason they hit a dry spell, we can part ways amicably and they aren't out the $200,000 a year trying to pay for a staff member now that they have on the books. And
Yeah.
even then they could just fire that person, but nobody likes to have to be that guy, right? Like nobody likes to have to be the one that's like, oh yeah, I brought you in, things were good, but I got to let you go now because you may not get that person back. You may not have, you know, that relationship may be permanently damaged because they feel like they've been kind of betrayed by the relationship. That's not the case when you've got somebody like me that's a fractional. Like I am there fully expecting that, you know, at some point we will part
Yeah.
ways.
With a handshake, because that's how we started. Well,
Yeah.
and I like that you're saying that because there's so many times that companies are struggling. Do we need somebody full time? And anymore, 80% of the time, they don't, but they don't know what else to do. And like even down to the VA, like or whatever you want to call them in house, like sometimes you just don't need that extra help. And I think that's where the temporary works of service um got its start, like you know years ago. I think over 100 years now, but because you don't need that full-time person, right? I built my whole
Hmm.
career on that. Oh, you only need me for 4 months? Great. I'm your girl. Because I want to leave, right? There's no hardship of like, okay, where the project's over. Great. I learned stuff. I was great meeting the people I met. On to the next one, right?
Yeah.
And but yet people get scared of the insecurity that that can build, but it's also it keeps you alive into like what other challenge can I find, right? Like you know, like going into different, like it might all be construction, but there's not one construction project the same as the other, right? Because they have some similarities, but the things that aren't normal will be totally not normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like construction's construction, but the abnormal, why they need you to follow the things, the red flags, they're different. So it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you going, "Oh, that's like, how do we fix this? How do we, you know?" And I think that's where the fun of it can come in as that
Yeah.
fractional CEO or project manager or whatever, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I have found is I really enjoy getting into it with the clients and saying like, okay, that's a problem, but like how do we creatively get through this? How do we figure out like how do we
Hmm.
get around this issue? How do we make it maybe even into an advantage for us rather than saying like, oh, this is like gonna sink us. But what it comes down to is a lot of companies, they just weren't even tracking those things. They're not tracking their project risks. They're not tracking they might be looking at the schedule, they might be looking at the budget, oftentimes not both at the same time. They're just kind of like
Yikes.
they're just kind of going through the motions like, okay,
Yeah.
we won this contract. We know we need to get the work done. We're going to schedule it and get the work done, but they're not tracking anything along the way. So they don't realize sometimes how exposed they are to things like a simple weather event or like global supply chain issues or something like that. It's like, yeah, could anybody have seen that COVID was going to do what it did to the global supply chain?
No.
Probably not at the time that things were happening, but could a company have looked at it and said like, well, hey, there's probably 100 different ways that our supply chain could get messed up here because we have one supplier in one state that does one thing for us, and that's all we rely on. We never branch out our suppliers. We never look at other alternative means of getting equipment or materials shipped to the site. Like that's exposure that you don't need. And it's things that like that I really like helping companies see and try to get around when it comes down to it.
Well, and I understand that because I used to be in oil and gas, and it was just like you have a project coming up, potentially, right? Like they gave you the green light to go scope out pipe, scope out workers, go, and then it's so far in advance before it actually the job site opens. Like you are flying to Italy and Germany and all these places to scope out stuff. Well, then it's got to come over, and it's like, what if the project goes stalemate? Who's stuck with the holding that bag of billions of dollars, right? Like, and we all know that that keeps going back and forth with this pipeline's going for it. No, this pipeline's not going for it. Oh, the president changed, so we don't have the contract anymore. It's like, ay, ay, ay. Like, I knew people that were on the project, after the project, on the project, after the project for their whole career, depending on what president was in house,
Hmm.
right? Because they'd buy this stuff, no, it's off. Then they'd store the stuff, then it's back on. Then it's like, oh my God. You did that for
Yeah.
25 years? Yep.
Yeah, I could see it. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to, we don't want companies to get too ahead of themselves either, because they might win a bunch of work. They might have a lot of these contracts in hand and say, okay, I can go hire a bunch of full-time staff and like we're going to take care of this. And it's like, but what happens if one of those contracts falls through? Or
Hmm.
what happens if it gets stalled out, or you're halfway through the project, they haven't paid you yet, but the project ran out of money? Or, whatever, like whatever the case is, like there's a ton of different possibilities of what could happen.
Yeah.
And that's where the fractional nature of what I do, I think, really helps people because it's like, okay, if we just need to take a time out and part ways for a little bit, let's do it. Like I'll see you back when the project comes full swing again,
Hmm.
or not. Maybe we've built the systems you need that when the project comes back online, you're good to go. You don't necessarily need me, and that's kind of the goal. But that's one of the lessons that I've recently picked up. It was actually from a book called How Big Things Get Done. Uh, the idea that you want to close that window that the project is open as quickly as
Hmm.
possible. And so that's where the 90-day sprint comes in, is like I want to try to get them the tools and the techniques that they need as quickly as possible. So that way we are exposed to less risk overall of like some crazy black swan event coming in and just wrecking everything, when it's like, no, you could get these tools quickly rather than me taking 6 months to a year to do it, and you're just ready to go. Like we are reducing that exposure across your project portfolio, and you've got what you need for when you're winning new work to look at that with a critical eye and say like, how realistic is this that this is going to go forward the way that they say it is? Or like, how realistic is that original project schedule? Or like, is the budget even in the realm of possibility?
Well, and it's also like when you're working with a bigger company, it's like Yeah, one division might be getting 16-inch pipe, and that project kind of gets delayed or whatever. But this other one, this other project needs 16-inch pipe. Okay, we'll just redirect it, right? And
Yeah.
then, like, and so it's like you're for a bad pun, you're watching the pipeline to where is it best feasibly made, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
and um but it's also seeing like when the project is done. This is one of the projects I was on, and we got the project done, and as a gift, we, we always find something that the city or wherever we're working would appreciate. And this was in Texas, and they had this old jail um, that they take the grade 9 kids to for a weekend. They stay overnight in the jail as a school project, and they were in um, dire straits for money because they were going to shut down. And so my project manager said, "Let's just cut him a check for 3,500." Right? And I said, "Okay." So we cut the check. They thought they had died and gone to heaven because it kept the program going a minimum of 10 years.
Wow.
Right? And as a construction, like 3,500, you can lose that. Like when you're
Right. That
thinking
could
10
disappear off the
million,
books.
yeah, 10 million, whatever project, like, and I remember the project manager saying, "Isn't it crazy?" And I said, "How small the gift can be that means the world." And he's like, "I'm so glad we did that."
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of what I'm trying to get at with companies now is this idea of like culture,
Hmm.
trying to improve culture, make sure that it's a very positive space that we're working in. Not only does that help with burnout, but that has positive ripples everywhere. Like if somebody loves their job and they're enjoying things when they come to work and do their job, they're taking that home. They're taking that out into their communities, and then
Hmm.
that's bouncing back, and that positivity is coming back to the company as well,
Hmm.
and in the form of like goodwill and new contracts and just kind of like top of mind. If somebody needs something, they know who they can go to because they know who they enjoy working with. And I think that's such a powerful thing when these companies start to engage with their communities like that.
Yep. Well, and it also brings the extended into the company. Like you're not just going to a town or even working in your own city. That who can we help, right? The budget has a bit of cash flow. Maybe let's donate something like that to the Little League that they can get their new uniforms. Or, I mean, there's movie after movie about just somebody helping. You don't know why.
Hmm.
They just help. And now the outcast kids that, were just this team that got pulled together because, well, let's keep them off the street, have these fancy uniforms. They're showing up to play, right? And the other
Yeah,
teams are like, the uniform's not going to change them, but it does.
it does. It
It
does. It
does.
absolutely does.
They feel like they're part of the bigger picture, you know. And I totally agree. I think companies need to start thinking about fractional workers. It keeps the overhead low. You're not paying like you're not paying all the insurance and like the medical to keep full-time staff.
That's the big one. The medical right now is just exploding in cost, and I can definitely see companies turning to like, well, what do we do with this? Like how do we book this in at the rate that the costs are increasing there? How do we book that into a job as far as like understanding what our overhead is going to be for the next 1 to 2 years while we're on this project?
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to forecast that. So why not just take that out of the equation entirely with more fractional teams?
Yep. Well, and I mean, they're paying for it differently because your cost for being a fractional is more expensive if you think about it. So if you're saying you're hiring a full-time employee and it's going to cost you $100, well, you're getting your stuff covered because you're charging 130.
Yeah.
Like, right? But they're not paying you for the full year for you to sit there and do nothing.
Right. And that's the big trade-off is like what they're paying for is actual work.
Yeah.
They're not paying for time spent at the water cooler. They're
Yeah.
not paying for time spent just off a project sitting around. That's 100% true.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I think overall companies can save a lot of money doing fractional. And it doesn't even have to be the management side. Like it can be all the way down. Like you might only need an assistant on the team for a limited time. Like get the project up and going, start feeding you the documents, blah, 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 right? But even then, it's like so many people are doing their own assistant work because they got the tools, they can do it,
Hmm.
right? Gone are the days where the management can't type or write letters or put proposals together, right? But
Yeah.
you still need that person to come in and help coordinate because maybe there's three or four fractionals amongst the team of core, right? And bring
Hmm.
in all the vendors and whatever, right? To get them all together and stuff.
Yeah, and that we'll see people who are trying to use like a VA or something like that, that they're almost like a project manager. It's like you're hiring a
Absolutely.
project manager to come in and kind of coordinate all those different elements. It's just what their definition of a project is different, but they're still basically a project manager.
Well, yeah, like I used to say, a project coordinator is is under the project manager, but we don't get any of the crap. You guys take it all because you managed it. We just did what we were told, right? Um, yeah, because even when I was in university and they're like, "Why aren't you going for PM?" and I go, "Take all that crap, forget it. I'll just feed you the analytics."
I can see that. Yeah.
Right? And my teacher was just like, he was dumbfounded. He goes, "You were such a project manager." And I go, "I'm not taking the crap." And maybe now, like if I went back to school now, maybe I would. But I was like, no, not interested. I'll just hand you the work. Thank you. My job's done. Right? Because you guys end up with more of the headaches.
Yeah, the fires that pop up,
Yeah.
the concerns, the irate clients, the CEO who's not happy with the pace of work or whatever the case is, a lot of that's flowing through the project manager.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's there, they become the filter. It's like hopefully they're not just passing it directly down to staff below them, but that becomes quite a mental load to have to carry as well.
Yeah. And what I liked about it was like I could I could see some red flags or some caution flags, and I'd go send the email or go have the conversation, and say, better watch this. Like just, and they go, thanks. Thanks for the heads up. I go, you're welcome. Right? Because I would see it doing the coordination of things. But I'll never forget the time that I got a call on the way to work on my personal cell phone. And I said, this better be important. And my field guy says, kinda. And I said, what did you forget? We have 300 guys starting today and there's no bathrooms. And I'm like, are you joking? And I'm like, guys, come on. Right? Like, so emergency, we need bathrooms out here. And it's not like, it's just down the street. Like they're 300 miles in the middle of nowhere. So we worked it out.
That's fun.
But I'll never forget I was on a site visit and this guy is talking about some dirt. I don't know. I'm trying to catch up to the conversation. I'm like, am I missing something? What's going on? He's talking about his brand new born child, the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. Isn't she beautiful? She's like, nothing's wrong. And I said to one of the guys, I go, isn't he talking about the dirt? Right? And and all of a sudden it was just like, my gosh, you have pride in your work. And he goes, of course, she's beautiful. Because this company was, we will leave your land better than we took it. So we dig up the farmer's land, lay the pipe, and put it back better than the farmer would have ever had it. And he was describing better than he ever had it. This beautiful girl. And I just thought, oh my gosh. So that was my first day on the job site that I was just like, got it. You guys really care about your work. You know, because these are rough and tumble guys, right? Like they live out there, it's harsh work, but on a beautiful sunny day and it's every morsel of dirt's perfectly played. Yeah. We had a good laugh for a while on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
So,
see that. I can see that. And that's what it's about, right? Trying to generate that positive culture, that intent of like you love what you do and you do what you love,
hmm
and you're out there trying to make a difference in the world.
hmm and like they they work really hard and they're away from their families during this time for many, many weeks, months, right?
Hmm.
That, if they didn't find joy in it, what's it for? It
Right.
can't be the money.
Right. Because you can go make money, you make good money doing things that don't require you to have to be away from your family for
hmm
that extended period of time. But, my cousin's actually in that line of work right now. They transfer him about every year or two to a new project location doing large solar installations. And it's kind of one of those things where he's even looking at it now and saying, you know what, I think I'm ready to pull the plug on this and say like we're gonna find a place to camp and put down some roots,
hmm
because he's starting to lose the passion for that travel. Essentially, that's kind of why he got into it, was like, okay, I'm gonna be in a new location, I'm gonna travel a lot, and it's like when he was a little bit younger, that totally worked for him, but now it's not working like it used to, and so
hmm
he's looking at making a change now.
hmm Well, and I've heard from the guys that are in these camps of 300 men. It's not a good situation. And I'm like, why? Because you don't want 300 men idly just hanging out together for weeks on end, right? And then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, like everything starts going, like the psyche, as much as it's not jail, it may as well be.
Hmm.
They can go in and out of their room, but it's still the same monotony of the same thing every day, right? Not
Yeah.
not having their spouses with them or yeah, like it's interesting. It was a learning for me on the psyche.
Interesting. Yeah, more things that you wouldn't necessarily think right off the bat when you're talking construction that you'd have to worry about is like whether or not we need a psychiatrist on staff to for oversee the teams that are out here working on these projects, because cabin fever has set in and
Well,
is
yeah,
causing chaos.
because like you think about especially some of those pipelines that were like it's minus 30. They're in little portable makeshift bedrooms. Like it's not like they're really insulated. They
Hmm.
are, but they're not. And like yeah, we you put the companies put out as much out there for them, but that's why they also had to make dry camps. because you add alcohol into it, the camp's done,
Yeah.
right? Like, yeah, like they won't work together. The fights, the craziness, and depending on where they are, they're in the middle of nowhere, right? Like he may as well be parked on the top of, some mountain. Um, yeah. So it's interesting seeing it all and that's like one of my clients said to me, like, how do you know so much about so much? Because I've worked so many places, I've worked with so many people, and I love people, so I always want to find their story. How did you become who you are? Right? Like,
Hmm.
especially when they're not from North America. Why did you pick this city? Why didn't you pick other cities? Why did you pick this country? Like, what made, and so it's just because I've come from immigrants, right? So it's like, why did you pick here? Why not? Like, you know, and I think about, like, if my parents had stayed in California, no, that would not have been good for me, right? Growing up. Like,
Hmm.
I grew up in the city that's best for me in the world. Did they choose it that way? No. But I might have had a play in it as a glimmer in their eye. Like, no, let's go to Calgary. This is good. So, as we wrap up, this has been a wonderful conversation of learning and understanding. What do you want the listeners to know, first off? Secondly, how do they get a hold of you? And I will have it in the show notes, but you can say it. So,
So, what I want everybody to take away from today's conversation is that project management doesn't have to be this like black box of confusion and jargon. The tip that I have for most people is stick to the basics. Who does what by when. If you're sticking to that, you're going to get through a lot of problems. You're going to get through a lot of times when you're just feeling like I don't really know what the next step is. Well, then you haven't broken it down to the small enough component yet. You just got to stay focused on that who does what by when, and that'll get you through it. And so, speaking of how people get a hold of me, you can contact me at I'm always open to a phone call or a text, but that's at 805-590-9976. Again, 805-590-9976. Or reach out to me at creatapult.com. That's creatapult.com. And I've got some freebies there with creatapult.com/health, where you can take your free 10-minute assessment for how your project management delivery methods are doing. And if you find that you're seeing a lot more red flags than you'd like on that assessment, then I highly encourage you to reach out and we'll see what we can do about it. The other one is, again, going back to that who does what by when framework. I've got a worksheet that you can download at creatapult.com/stalled that I tell people all the time. It can get any project unstuck in under 15 minutes by using that worksheet and the who does what by when framework.
wow, that's fabulous because that's giving them tools right away to figure out where they are in the process to where to say, we need to have a conversation, Chris. Like,
Yeah.
we're stuck here. Like, how do we get through that? And then maybe it could just be a few conversations or a month long or, and then reassess. That's wonderful. So, once again, this is an authentic conversation. I'm your host, Adele Bernard. Today, our guest was Kris Gray. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what a wonderful conversation with Kris. And it gives you a different perspective on what a fractional project manager, CFO, um, CEO, like all, and even just a VA, like, do you need a person full time or can a fractional person come along? And there's more and more of us as entrepreneurs that are saying, we want to work with many, not just one. And so it opens up your eyes to how someone can come support you in your company for a project, a long term, or just a couple months just to help you over a hump or to cover holidays or something like that. Um, and it's also interesting how you start on a path and you realize, well, this isn't running so smooth, right? Maybe that isn't your path. And I like how he talked about he learned to make the runway from his parents because so many people are just trying to get through the week, the month, the year that they don't realize they got to make the runway for the 5 years, 10 years. And have you bought yourself a job, even though you think you're an entrepreneur? You are an entrepreneur. But if you can't leave for extended time or just take off when you want to, that you don't come back to a whole bunch of work, then you might have bought yourself a job. So I thank Kris for being a guest, and I'll just share a little bit more about Transition Clarity, who supports this show as a soul strategist and intuitive guide. I help those people. Are you building a runway, or are you looking after today and maybe tomorrow? And it's finding the right fit for you, regardless of the conditionings, the belief systems, and the untruths that you've been told you are. Because maybe you are an accountant or an architect, but your passion is music. What if you want to be touring in music, but you've never put yourself out there? And right now is the time to really start thinking about what is your heart singing about? Getting out of your head of where the have tos and the shoulds and the musts, those words don't belong in our life. Those are conditions. But when your heart is saying, follow your passion to music, be that amazing artist, and trust that you will be absolutely looked after. Because when you're told, no, you must be something, you must have a profession. No one makes money as an artist. That's their conditioning placed on you. Something to think about. If you like this show and you want to see more, please subscribe, share, and tell your friends. It's how we get the algorithms to do their thing. I don't understand it, but I just say it. But no, I love all my subscribers. I would love more. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or iHeartRadio. And if you want to have a session with me, just not even a session, just a conversation to see if this is something that you're interested in, I will have everything in the show notes, or you can do transitionclarity.as.me/, and that will give you a free call with me to see if this is something that you'd be interested in. Thank you for listening and have a great day.